Hi folks, welcome back to the Tabletop's Edge and our last Blitzkrieg campaign playthrough. Today we're picking up with the start of turn 2, the 17th of December. So far, we've seen the first day of the German attack get off to a fairly unimpressive start, particularly in the 7th Army sector. The biggest disappointment of the first day would probably be the 12th Volksgrenadier Division, which failed to open a hole along the northern route there by blasting through the 99th Infantry Division defenders along the road. However, there are some signs for optimism for the Germans. The 26th Volksgrenadier Division in the south had a decent day, and the 2nd Panzer Division's infantry battalions have managed to cross the Skyline Drive and are approaching Clairvaux from the east. Slightly further north, the 116th Panzer Division had probably the best day, despite only having a single activation with which to work. They managed to clear the road to Berg Royland. They captured the bridge intact over the Our there and have managed to get their Panzer Grenadier Battalion all the way west to the Skyline Drive Highway, and they are poised to exploit through that gap here on the 17th. For the Americans, the 4th Infantry Division has held firm against some rather heavy pressure in the south and managed to hit back at the German 212th Volksgrenadier Division. While in the north, the Germans have not been as active as they could be. The 106th does have 5 battalions surrounded on the Schnee Eifel, but they are still in relatively good shape with only a couple of step losses scattered amongst all of those battalions. There's still hope that they may yet get those battalions, or at least most of those battalions, out of their surrounded situation. But all that's going to depend upon what happens today on the 17th. Now that the bridges are up over, or most of the bridges are up over the Our River, the Germans will be able to start sending their vehicles and heavy equipment over, which is going to make their attacks a lot more powerful. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the pre-turn phase, where we'll check the weather, roll for air points and replacements, and then get the reinforcements ready. So let's go check the weather. All right, first step in the weather is to determine the ground state. Now on the 16th and 17th of December, the game says that we do not roll for that. It is automatically normal ground conditions the first 2 days, so we'll leave that in the normal space. Next up, we're going to roll to determine the atmosphere. On a 1 through 2, it's fair. 3 through 6 becomes poor. And you can see we rolled a 5, so the atmosphere becomes poor, which means our visibility is likely to drop here. And we have a 2, which brings our visibility from unlimited down to 2 hexes. So the skies start to cloud over, visibility drops down to 2 hexes, and now we're going to roll for the Allied air points available. With a poor atmosphere, they will need a 6 to get a single air point, and a 3 is not going to do it, so no air points for the Americans today. Now we'll make a roll, and the replacements are split into AV replacements and non-AV replacements. First, the AV replacements for December 17th for the Americans, a 4, and that is going to net them 2 AV replacements. And the non-AV replacements are a set number at 4. So 2 AV replacements and 4 non-AV replacements for the Americans. On the German side of things, we'll roll for their AV replacements, and we get a good roll of a 5. That is 4 AV replacements and 1 Tiger replacement. I don't think they have any Tiger units on the map yet. Piper might be the only one with a Tiger unit. I'm going to have to double check that. I think they get a few units or a couple of units later. However, that Tiger replacement can instead be used as a regular AV replacement if there are no eligible Tiger units. And for non-AV replacements, they will get 8. So 8 non-AV replacements for the infantry battalions, and 4 or maybe 5 AV replacements for the Panzer divisions, which they actually can use since some of their Panzer battalions actually begin the game with some step losses already. With the replacements rolled for, I will go ahead and assign those replacements, and once that's done, I'll give you a quick briefing on where we decided to place those reinforcements, or replacements rather. With the German replacements assigned, I'll just briefly show you where we decided to put them. We do have one Tiger unit on the map, and it is the 501st Schwere Panzerabteilung as part of Kampfgruppe Piper. Piper did not activate last turn, so that's why I wasn't sure if he was on the map yet or not. So we were able to use that one Tiger replacement here because the 501st shows up with only 2 of its 4 steps. And there is a special rule that requires every Tiger unit to make a die roll. If they roll a 1 prior to moving, they actually take a step loss. So keeping this as close to full strength as possible is a priority because it's an extremely good unit, as you might imagine. Now, with the other 4 AV replacements, you can only add 1 replacement to a unit each turn. The 116th Panzer Division's 2 Panzer battalions, 1st and 2nd Battalion of the 16th Panzer Regiment, they each started under strength. The 1st only had 3 steps and the 2nd only 2 steps. So we placed 1 replacement point in each of those to try to bring those closer to full strength. You can also see here 2nd Panzer Division, both of their Panzer Divisions are also down a step each. However, they do have a total of 7 steps in their 2 Panzer battalions, which is now what 116th Panzer has with their 2 battalions. The other 2 AV replacement points we decided to use on the 2 Kampfgruppen that were formed as part of 18th Volksgrenadier and 12th Volksgrenadier. That's Kampfgruppe Holz here, which had been reduced down to 2 steps, and Kampfgruppe Rennes, which was also reduced to 2 steps. So they are both now back up to 3 steps. And we wanted to do that. The 12th is actually a pretty good infantry formation for the Germans, and they'll be doing a lot of attacking here. The Kampfgruppe Holz is the only AV unit they have in the formation, and I'm pretty sure they don't even have any red support, at least for the moment. So keeping Kampfgruppe Holz on map is kind of a priority, at least right now. And same thing here for Kampfgruppe Rennes. Now, we had 8 non-AV replacements, and we kind of spread those around a little bit. We gave 1 to the 26th Volksgrenadier Division, 1st of the 77th Grenadier Regiment or Battalion, because it had suffered 2 losses. And then we gave 2 more steps to 2 battalions in the 12th Volksgrenadier. You can see the 2nd Battalion of the 48th had actually suffered 3 of its 6 steps in losses. Actually, they suffered 2 because everybody began 1 step down. So we got back 1 of their losses there. Let's see, that's 3. We put 2 steps into the 212th Volksgrenadier on their heaviest hit battalion, as well as bringing the 212th Pioneer Battalion back on map. So it's in the process of reforming at the headquarters right now after getting blasted by some 4th Infantry Division artillery. And the rest of the non-AV replacements, we put 3 of them into 2nd Panzer Division here. They're going to be doing a bit of attacking, more than likely, here on the 17th, probably in the vicinity of Clairvaux. So we gave each of the 304th Regiment's battalions a step, as well as bringing their 38th Panzer Pioneer Battalion up to full strength. And I think that's it for the German replacements. On the American side, the 2 AV replacements, we put 1 into the 70th Tank Battalion, which is in support of the 4th ID. It only had 2 steps. It is red support. It's the only red support that 4th Infantry has right now. So we'd like to keep that support unit on map and able to support the rest of the division there. With the 2nd AV replacement we put it into the 99th Infantry Division. We brought back the 801st Tank Destroyer Battalion, which had suffered 2 step losses from Kampfgruppe Holz. And that's probably one of the most cost-effective uses of a single AV point you will see, because now, by putting that 1 AV point into 801st Tank Destroyer, bringing it back, it's now in support of all of these infantry battalions you see. So these infantry battalions now will all have some kind of support, at least until somebody drives up and kills this step again. For the 4 American non-AV replacements, I think, where did we put those? I think we put 2 of them into the 4th Infantry Division, the 1st and 2nd Battalions of the 12th Infantry Regiment, which are down in and adjacent to Echternach. We boosted them up, anticipating a continued German attack in that sector. And I think where do we go with the others? They're in here somewhere. Well, it actually escaped. I don't know where we put the other 2. Oh, yes, we put one into the 112th Regiment of the 28th Division up here. It had been reduced to only 2 steps, so we brought that back. And then we also put the last step into the 1st Battalion of the 9th Infantry, which is part of the 2nd Infantry Division. It had not seen action last turn. However, as you can see, that whole regiment is down to half strength with 3 steps remaining. And we anticipate these guys being involved in some heavy fighting in the near future. So we wanted to take this opportunity to at least start to increase the steps in those battalions to maintain their staying power on the map. Now, with the replacements assigned, we prepare the reinforcements. I'll talk about those here in a little bit, and we'll move on to the assignment phase. The Americans are prohibited by scenario-specific rules from making any assignments on the 16th or 17th of December. So just the Germans have to worry about assignments in this phase. The first thing they did was unassign the 2 of the 3 88 battalions in the game. They took the 88s from the 326 Volksgrenadier, which is way up at the north end of the map, and they took the other one from the 352nd Volksgrenadier down on the southern flank. These will be reassigned to formations that will be able to get a little more use out of them. Now, the last assignments the Germans made involved one of their reinforcements, which was a Stug battalion here, and they assigned it to the 12th Volksgrenadier Division, which immediately placed it in support, which will give that formation some red support, and that is the formation here that managed to push back one of the 3 battalions that they attacked, but are still having some difficulty clearing the road here. The expectation is that with the addition of the assault guns to the formation, that it will give them the extra punch they need to go ahead and clear these battalions out and continue the drive to the west. That's going to do it for the assignment phase. I will take a moment now and just kind of show you briefly the American reinforcements this turn, as well as the German. On the American side, the vast majority of their reinforcements are coming in on the northern edge or the northern sector. They are going to get the entire 7th Armored Division here, and we'll talk about where they will deploy momentarily on the map. It's a big formation, and it's a pretty good formation for the Americans. They're going to get 2 regiments of the 1st Infantry Division. There is a single motorized infantry battalion, the 99th Norwegian Battalion, which will arrive in Malmedy, and they will get 1 regiment of the 9th Infantry Division. You can see right here, we have the HQ cards for those divisions. All 3 of the divisions have a fatigue level of 1. The 1st Infantry Division has an additional artillery point assigned to it, and the 7th Armored Division HQ is going to show up as used. The only other reinforcements the Americans have are 2 battalions for the 4th Infantry Division down on the southern end. Now, for the Germans, in addition to the Stug battalion that they assigned to the 12th Volksgrenadier, they're going to get the rest of the 8th Fallschirmjäger Regiment for 3rd Fallschirmjäger Division and Kampfgruppe Wanderheit. This is the small, kind of disastrous parachute operation that the Germans undertook. You can see here, Wanderheit's entire formation consists of 2 company-sized units, and they're going to be dropped pretty well behind American lines. And they are usually dispatched fairly quickly, although they can provide some help to the Germans by slowing down the American reinforcements, particularly of the 1st U.S. Infantry Division. So it remains to be seen just how effective they may be. Some games, they are just blown right off the map as soon as they show up. Other times, they stick around long enough to be a bit of a thorn in the Americans' side. So with that said, it is time to determine the first player for this turn. First player determination is a very straightforward opposed die roll. Both sides roll 2d6. Whoever rolls higher will be the first player and must go first. So the Germans will roll first, and they will roll a 7 right down the middle, and we'll see what the Americans come up with. The Americans roll a 10, and they will go first. So first choice of activation for the will be for the Americans. And before we get to that, I will be setting up the reinforcements. Now, the 2 Fallschirmjäger battalions show up at the 3rd Fallschirmjäger HQ, as well as the 2 battalions of 4th Infantry Division. Von der Heydt, his formation shows up within 2 hexes of this hex here, and you can see we've placed one in the adjacent to it and one a little further up the road here, both of them exerting zones of control onto the road. The idea being that they will slow down the approach of 1st Infantry Division here. We have 1 regiment entering here and a 2nd regiment here, and we have a regiment of the 9th Infantry Division over here on this track, and they are probably going to wander along the track here and try to fill in the northern flank here. First ID for the Americans wants to drive down these roads and get into a blocking position down here in the Malmedy area as quickly as possible. So that's going to mean going through Von der Heydt's troopers here. The last reinforcement to be placed is the 7th Armored Division, and they've got a bit of a complex setup. So we'll look at that in a little more detail. All right, here you can see the 7th Armored Division, and it is a large unit. It is composed of 8 units. There are 6 task forces. All of them are dual units. They are action rating 4. The Engineer Battalion here on its deployed side is an action rating 3. And the armor values aren't bad. There are 3. They will find themselves probably outclassed by most of the German units in either the move mode or deployed mode. But it sets up within 4 hexes of any of these 4 hexes that I've marked here. There's Saint-Vit, Vilsam, the little hamlet of Beho in the south here, and can't read that one, Puteaux here. And it's within 4 hexes. Now, one thing that we're going to have to be cognizant of is 1/16th Panzer, which has crossed the bridge here at Berg Reulen and is capable of heading out this way. This is not a unit. It is actually the trains, the combat trains of the 112th Regiment up at Urin. So there are literally no American combat forces in front of 1/16th Panzer here out to the west or even to the northwest. So we're going to have to decide how we want to deploy 7th Armored Division. We need to be careful. It's not buddies with anybody, so we can't get it too tangled up here with 106th, or we'll be looking at some coordination, perhaps some mixing. And we do have several potential German axes of advance that we need to cover. Do we cover a drive to the north? Do we look at covering something heading out to the south, or even turning southwest and heading down towards Bastogne? We're going to be limited in how far south we can deploy, since this is our furthest south hex and we can only go 4 hexes from there. We're only going to get right about to the edge of the screen here. So this will probably take a few minutes to think through and consider where we want to set up the headquarters, where we want to establish our main supply route, and so on. So once we get that figured out, we get 7th Armored in place, I'll come back, let you take a look at that, and then we'll have the Americans select their first formation for activation this turn. Now, 7th Armored Division has a command radius of 12, which means it can cover a wide area here, and that's essentially what they've done. The headquarters has decided to locate here at Vilsam, along with the Engineer Battalion as a bit of a divisional reserve. The bulk of the division is down here around this crossroads. We've got one armored task force out to the east here with a range of 2. It can put an engagement zone onto the main road here south of Saint-Vite, which will prevent truck movement and headquarters from moving through there. We're also trying to maintain, we may end up shifting this a little further south depending upon what happens down here with CCR just off the south edge of the screen here. We've got the armored recon battalion here off to the east in some poor terrain, watching the road leading west out of Saint-Vite, and we have an armored infantry task force up here to the northeast, protecting the left flank of the division. And there are some tracks through the division's general area of operations here, and we've got another armored infantry task force here. This can either head south, north, or east as required, and we'll see what happens. Now again, the formation shows up with the headquarters used, which means in order to get an activation this turn, they will have to roll a 4, 5, or 6. And with that, we will move on now to the first activation of the turn, which belongs to the Americans. And we are going to go ahead and activate the 106th Infantry Division in an attempt to try to extricate those trapped battalions before the situation gets any worse. While there are some other opportunities for the U.S. right now at the start of the 17 December turn, by winning the initiative, they do get an opportunity to try to get some of the 106th battalions that are trapped out before more of the German line here starts to thicken in and make that impossible. It's also going to allow them to shuffle the defenses here. They have 2 battalions that are currently unprepared. They'll be able to deploy those and get those back into a prepared defense. Also, you'll notice here, since the cards, the HQ cards, are portable enough, I've decided to try and experiment and see if I can get these actually on screen for at least part of the formation's activation. That'll allow you to see the card and reference it a little better than having it off screen the entire time. So with that said, let's go ahead and activate the 106th here by flipping the headquarters over to its used side. The combat trains are on the map. They are just off of the screen here to the right along this road at optimal distance. So the MSR is complete. We will maintain our prepared defense, which brings us up to Snafu. As you can see, they have a fatigue of 0. They're not coordinated. They're not mixed. They do have the -2 for the game-specific DRM. The trains are at optimal distance, which will bring that to a -1. There's no ghost trains, and they are not crossing the streams. So, and they're also not using tracks. So it's just a -1 to the snafu roll for the 106th. And again, with the prepared defense, a partial activation is our best result. So as long as we roll more than a 3, we'll be fine. Roll comes in at a 9, which will be more than enough for the 106th purposes. I don't anticipate making any attacks with the 106th. However, we'll just, let's see, they've got 4 plus 2 assigned artillery points, which is halved because of the prepared defense. Just going to leave them with 3 artillery points and only 1 objective marker. Now, while I don't anticipate necessarily making any attacks, that doesn't mean that we might not want to shoot some artillery at some Germans that are getting a little close to us. So we're going to place the objective marker here. And let's see. Let's start in this general area here around Steinebrook. You can see the bridge OK marker indicating that the Germans were able to get the bridge intact. And we're going to start off by moving that guy 1 there. Now remember, with the partial activation, all movement factors are halved. We will flip these guys onto their deployed side. He's going to go 1.5, take his place. And we're going to flip this one back here. Actually, before we do that, the 2nd of the 424th here is going to spot for some artillery barrages. We're going to spend 2 points, and we're going to drop those 2 points right here on the 2nd Battalion of the 190th. They are in terrain, so it's going to be a 4, 5, or 6 to get a hit. And as expected, they get 1 hit on the 2nd of the 190th from 62nd Volksgrenadier, and we'll spend that last artillery point on the 1st of the 164th here. They are also in terrain, so another 4, 5, or 6, and the 2 misses. So 1 step loss from the artillery. We'll pull back a little bit here because we're going to turn our attention to the folks on the Schnee Eifel shortly. So we'll get 1, 2, and you can see the 106 now is starting to form a line here along the Our River. Their concern is to try and get as much of the division out here to the east back to this vicinity to help solidify this this defensive line here. And a question, let's see, with the trapped battalions, we'll go ahead and do their voluntary retreats first. So 1st of the 423rd is going to voluntarily retreat. That's going to cost it a step loss, and it's going to go 1, 2, 3 hexes to here, and they've made it outside of the encirclement, although they are still rather vulnerable, as we will surely see when the Germans activate in this vicinity. So they're not out of the woods yet, but they are closer to friendly lines. I think we will also do the 3rd Battalion of the 423rd. We will have them, there's no good place for them to go, so we'll just put them right here. That'll incur a 2nd step loss because of the enemy zone of control that they retreat into. And then the 3rd Battalion of the 422nd is also going to make a break for it here. The 2 battalions we have way off in the east here, 1st and 2nd Battalion of the 422nd, are probably too far away to be helped at this point. It would be a 2-step loss to get to here. They would still be cut off from everything, so that's going to be another step loss when the isolation effects are calculated, and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. They would also suffer another step loss for being out of command. So they would go from 5 steps down to a single step if we were to attempt a voluntary retreat. Better off to just leave them where they are, and again, like we said, have them tie up this road and maybe tie down a few more German battalions here in the east for at least a turn or 2. The last 106th unit, actually the second to last 106 unit we're going to consider moving here, is the Engineer Battalion. They are sitting along the road here in the town of Schönberg, but they are in a bit of an exposed position. And I think we are just going to leave them there. However, the other unit we're going to be looking at is the 2nd of the 423rd, way back here to the west. We're going to bring them down 1, 2, 3, 4, 1.5, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4.5, 5, 6. I think we'll place them along this road coming into Samvit from the east. I believe that's all we have with the 106th. I'm going to go ahead and roll fatigue. We did place an objective marker, so a 1 or less and the fatigue will increase. And we rolled a 2, so no fatigue increase. Now, if we can get a 2nd activation, we might actually be able to get those 3 battalions back to our lines. But before I do that, we're going to need to account for the isolation losses. So the 1st and 2nd Battalion over here, they're going to take 1 step loss for being out of command radius, and they will take a 2nd step loss for having no safe paths since they are surrounded by German units and ZOCs. And while I do that, I'm actually going to go ahead and mark off the other losses that were inflicted this activation. I'll be right back. And we're back. And while I was looking that over, the Command radius from the headquarters here in Sonneville actually only extends to this hex row here. So the 3rd of the 423rd and the 3rd of the 422nd did take an additional step loss for being out of command radius, which brings the 3rd of the 423rd's total step losses for that turn to 3 step losses, 1 for the voluntary retreat, 1 for ending the retreat in a ZOC, and a 3rd for being out of command radius. However, if the Americans can roll a 6 here to get a second activation by 106th, we should be able to get these 3 battalions back into a safer position. And unfortunately, they roll a 2, so that is going to do it for the 106th Infantry Division on the 17th. All in all, not a hugely disappointing turn for them, and we'll just see how much damage the Germans can inflict on these 3 battalions as they try to run. But they did manage to kind of throw up a bit of a line here just east of the town. And with that, it's going to head back over to the Germans for their first activation of the 17th. For the Germans, their main priority right now is exploiting everything they can. They've got a ton of opportunities still. First SS Panzer Corps here is finally moved up and in a position to actually launch an attack, although they are going to have to activate 12th Volksgrenadier first and try to get them out of the way to avoid some unnecessary mixing and coordinating. Further down the line in the southern end, they have got some of the units here now that the bridges are up. This bridge in particular has allowed the units on the south bank here to get some support. I've placed some temporary support dropped on the German south of the river that still cannot get their division's support. 5th Fallschirmjäger does not have much standing in its way. It would like to be able to take advantage of that before the Americans can react. And then further north, we've got 26th Volksgrenadier here that's pushing west-south of Clairvaux, and 2nd Panzer Division. Clairvaux is difficult to take. You can see it's in very difficult terrain here. It is a city, nasty terrain all around it, and right now there is a single American engineer battalion that is holding Clairvaux. Clearing that would be incredibly helpful. So getting 2nd Panzer Division moving before the Americans can react would be ideal. However, the formation that made the best progress on day 1 is 116th Panzer. And I think the Germans are going to take advantage of an American oversight and activate 116th Panzer before the Americans can correct their oversight by activating another formation in the area. So the Germans are going to elect to activate 116th Panzer at this time, and we'll see how this goes. The 116th Panzer Division's headquarters is here at Lutzkampen, and the trains are unmapped. They are just off of the screen here, about a hex or 2. They are right at the maximum optimal distance range. 116th Panzer is not going to go into prepared defense. It has a complete MSR, so we are going to go ahead and move on to the snafu roll. Now you can see on the card here, they are fresh, which will give them a +1. There's no coordination or mixing. Game snafu gives them another +1 to bring it up to +2. The trains are at optimal distance for a +3, and that is all that applies. So a +3 on the snafu roll here. And they managed to roll an 8, becomes an 11, which gives them a full activation. That will be 2 objective markers and all of their artillery. You can see they have 2 arty points assigned to them, in addition to the 3 that are organic to the division, for a total of 5. Now, at the end of the 16th, there was absolutely nothing to the west of 116th Panzer other than air. 7th Armored Division for the U.S. has arrived and started forming up here due west of their breakthrough across the Our at Berg Royland. However, that's not going to be a major issue for them yet, because The plan for 116th was to cross at Berg-Royland, reach the N12 highway here, and then swing north and come in and attack Saint-Vite from the southwest. And we are going to proceed to do that. Therefore, we're going to place both of our objective markers on the town itself. And let's see. Now things get a little interesting as we try to figure out the best way to take the city here. And I think what we're going to do is start off with our Panzer battalions. Let's see. We've got 2 Panzer battalions back here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. All right. So the 2nd Panzer battalion, flip over to its move side and come up the road 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, where they will enter the AV zone of control exerted by the U.S. Armored Cav here. That's going to require a stopping engagement because this is a real AV unit. So the stopping engagement is a 3 plus action rating 4 is a 7, plus 1 because the hex is in the double objective zone for an 8. Subtracting the Americans 1 plus AR3 is a 4. So 8 minus 4, it's a plus 4 on the engagement table where the target is real AV. And not a great roll. It is a 6, which becomes a 10. And that's going to be good enough. The result is target loss and retreat. Now, this is merely a single company or squadron of the 89th Recon Battalion, and it only has 1 step. So that will eliminate the Recon Battalion. And that is one of the 2 fire events that are used by the Panzer Battalion. They have used 8 movement points so far, and they are now going to go 8.5, and I believe the rails are 1. No, I'm sorry, railroad tracks cost 2, so that's going to be 10.5 to move to that hex, and they will spend their 2nd fire event as an attack by fire on the engineers in Saint-Vite. Now we have the headquarters of Combat Command B of the 9th Armored, which is not activated, and we have the headquarters of the 106th, which is done for the turn. And there is a small independent engineer company there. It's got 3 steps. You see an action rating of 2, and it's non-rebuildable. It has no movement. There are many of these little independent engineer units in this game, and I like what it's done because it allows the engineering detachments that were scattered at various towns along the way that Piper repeatedly ran into and foiled him at every step. It allows those guys to be reflected in the game, but not to be necessarily abused by players, because if you were to make them simply any other regular type of engineer unit, they would be doing all kinds of things beyond what they should be doing in the game. So with that, it is in a city hex, which means attack by fire in a city hex requires a 6 to inflict a step, and the 1 will not do it. So the Panzer Battalion is stopped, having expended its 2nd fire event. Now, at this point, I think we'll take a look at, see what else we want to do, and we will pick back up with the rest of the activation in just a moment. Having cleared the road to Saint-Vite, the next order of business is to actually attack to capture it. And for that, we're going to need an assault-capable unit, which means infantry. The 116th Panzer has 4 Panzer Grenadier battalions. 3 of them are mounted in trucks, and 1 is mounted in half-tracks. These guys out here south of the town. Now, the truck-borne battalions are all back here, having attacked yesterday to clear the road. I would like to use one of these guys to make the attack. However, they cannot reach the town on their deployed side, and if I flip them to their move side, you can see that their action rating drops from a 4 to a 3. And because the attack on Sanvit is so important, I want to give it every chance for success, and I really don't want to give up that +1 from having a lower action rating. So I think what we're going to end up doing is having the half-track mounted Panzer Grenadiers move up the road here, 2, 3 to here, and then they will go ahead and make an attack on the engineers in Sanvit, and we will expend 1 of our artillery points in a suppression barrage. So it's going to look like this for the attack. The Panzer Grenadiers have an action rating of 4. They do have red support, I believe, 1/16. Yes, they have red support here on the card. That's going to be +1. It is a double objective zone. That's going to make it a +6, +7 and 8 for the suppression mission, and the Panzers here are able to assist for a 9. So it's 9. From that, we are going to subtract the action rating 2 of the engineer battalion in the town, and these little garrison units are independent units, and as an independent unit, it is not going to be supported, nor is it going to be in a prepared defense. So without the support and without prepared defense, there's only a single combat unit in the hex, so there's no modification for that. It is infantry in a city hex, which will give it a +2. So they only have a total of 4. That's subtracted from the 9 that the Germans have, which is a +5 on the combat table. This should guarantee the Germans taking the town. It's just whether or not it's going to cost them anything. The die roll is a 5, which is certainly good enough. That 5 is going to become a 10. That is a situational loss. So no prepared defense on the part of the defender, which means no loss on the part of the Germans. And it forces a situational retreat and traffic. Now, these garrison units, if they are forced to retreat, are eliminated. So that will kill the 168th Engineer Battalion, and it will allow the 1st of the 60th to enter the town. However, there will be traffic in the town, which is a little unfortunate for the Germans. If they could have rolled a 6, that would have given them an 11, which would have been a mandatory retreat and no traffic. This traffic now will prevent any other units of the 116th from being able to move through Sanvit to exploit the capture to the north or even to the east here. So it's a little problematic. However, the main objective has been accomplished, and we now have jumped our first headquarters of the game. And I usually will play with the headquarters and combat train soft jump optional rule just because it takes away the perfect intelligence that you have that comes from playing board games, knowing that, okay, that's the hex where the headquarters is. I know it's there, so I can drive right there and take them out. However, since a lot of folks that are unfamiliar with the system or are maybe trying to learn the system are watching the playthrough, I've decided not to play with that. And this will actually result in more headquarters jumps and combat train jumps, so you'll be able to see how that mechanic works in the series. So the first thing we're going to do is jump the Combat Command B of the 9th Armored Division. When the trains or the headquarters are jumped, they need to retreat at least 3 hexes and be placed in a legal hex as far as MSR purposes are concerned. So that means they're going to have to be on either secondary road, primary road, or tracks, and placed in a hex that allows for a complete MSR. The trains for CCB of the 9th are located right here to the north. Now, one of the problems with your headquarters retreating is that it's just the headquarters that's retreating, not the units in the formation. And for units that are outside of command radius, they're going to suffer isolation losses of 1 step per activation. Again, this is one of the best ways to kill a formation, is to separate the headquarters from the troops in the formation. So a concern with having the headquarters run away and leaving the troops where they are is that they will eventually wither on the vine. Now, Combat Command B has not activated yet, so that's less of a concern for the Americans in this instance. They could retreat, they could retreat the CCB as close as there, but that still may mean yet another, they still may be close enough and in danger of being overrun again. Now, you don't want to move them too far back towards the trains because that will cut into their optimal distance, which will cause the trains to go into ghost mode. They'll lose that +1 for their snafu die roll, and you want to avoid as many negative snafu DRMs for the Americans early on as you can, since they're saddled with that -2 from the game specific. What we might do, though, is let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll go ahead and place them here for the retreat. Now, they will be marked as coordinated. I will show that momentarily. And any prepared defense that the formation had is also dropped at this point. Now, that doesn't affect CCB because they were not in a prepared defense, but it will affect 1st Infantry Division. 1st Infantry Division is also done, which means their units are not going to be able to sort of shift back towards the headquarters until their next activation. The trains for 106th are right just off screen here. Let me shift this over. There we go. These are the trains. The MSR is running this way. 1, 2, we could place the headquarters here, but again, I don't know that I want to necessarily do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't want to put the headquarters back this way because it will impinge on the 7th Armored Division's blob, which will end up coordinating both of those formations. Not a big deal for the 106 because it's going to be coordinated due to being jumped, but it will coordinate 7th Armored Division, which will hamper their attempt to activate this turn. And they'll end up mixed, which is another -1 on top of that. There's no concern with Combat Command B because all of the American combat commands in last Blitzkrieg are considered buddies with every other formation. And for those of you unfamiliar with the game, buddies is a term that's used where a formation that is a buddy with another formation never worries about being mixed or crossing the streams. So it allows the combat commands on the American side to move kind of wherever they need to go and work with whomever they need to work to kind of reflect the historical doctrine and use of those formations. So with 106th, I don't think we want to go west. I think the 106th is going to follow CCB up this primary road to the north instead. This will keep them from having to go too far to the west and should keep them out of 7th Armored Division's AO to the west of Saint-Vite. Now, another option could be to bring them up the N12 here, and the problem with that is the MSR would come here and either have to use tracks or it would have to go way up to the north and then come back down to get out to the trains, which would place it outside of optimal distance. There are no real good options for 106th at this point, so what we might do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know what? Maybe they will just stick with Combat Command B. We're going to see both headquarters displace up the road here, and then I'm going to go ahead and get a coordinated marker to mark both of those formations. I've placed 2 coordination markers here, one for each of the formations. There's CCB of the 9th and then 106th. These coordination markers will inflict a -1 snafu DRM on the next snafu roll for that formation, and then they will be removed. So, continuing now that the 116th has achieved their primary objective of capturing Saint-Vite, now it is basically the exploitation of the 116th. This is where they get an opportunity to perhaps run amok as best they can and cause as much carnage to the Americans. So I think what we're going to do is first we'll bring the headquarters up. It has a really nice command radius of 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yep. So we will bring the headquarters across the river, and the Panzer Grenadier Battalion that was stacked with them will go into move mode and also come up to the headquarters hex to protect that. We do need to be concerned about any reaction, potential reaction from 7th Armored Division here just to the west. Let's see. 1, 2. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. See, they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And where do we want the Pioneers? Pioneers are going to dismount from their trucks. 1, 2. I'll let them maybe. No, I tell you what, we're going to wait on them. And first, let's see. Rolling terrain for tactical is 3. So for the 2nd Panzer Battalion, actually it's the 1st of the 16th back here, that would be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and a half. Just short of what we're looking to do. So, unless they came up, they would have to do that. All right. We'll have these guys go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which places them in the AV zone of control of Task Force Brown here from 7th Armored, forcing a stopping engagement. You do not need an objective zone to do an engagement. It's going to be straight up 4 AV plus 4 action rating is 8 for the Germans. 3 AV plus a 4 action rating for the Americans is a 7. It's a +1. There is no double objective zone. There is no limited AV. No prepared defense for 7th Armored. No. And no multiple supports and no standoff. So it's a +1 on the engagement table. The target is real AV. And the Germans roll an 11. A very good roll for them, as that becomes a 12, which results in target loss and retreat. So Task Force Brown will now have to retreat 3 hexes, and we'll bring him, we'll bring him back here so he's at least still between the Germans and the combat trains of the 112th here. And that is the first fire vent used by the German Panzer Battalion. Let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They've used 9 movement points. And the question is, do we want to leave them there or have them continue driving west? Let's go ahead and go 10 and a half to here. Again, following up on the retreating Task Force Brown, it will be another stopping engagement, and it will be a +1 again for the Germans. And they are doing well with a 9, becomes a 10, which is another target loss and retreat. So they inflicted 2 step losses on Task Force Brown, forced Task Force Brown to retreat yet again. I think they're going to go 1, 2, 3 to the tracks here. And then that will bring 1st of the 16th to a stop since they have used their 2nd fire vent. Now, that will allow the Pioneers to dismount and come 1, 2, 3 and a half. What I'm trying to do here with the infantry formations is basically protect the MSR as well as the headquarters of the 116th Panzer by covering the possible avenues of advance by the Americans when they get an opportunity to activate. So from the road leading up here from the southwest, we've got a Panzer Grenadier Battalion. We put the Pioneers on this secondary road. We also have an actual Panzer Battalion out in front here. This hex is also covering the track leading down from the northwest here. And then we've got a Panzer Battalion, or a Panzer Grenadier Battalion closer to the bridge here. We're going to be moving the combat trains forward here in this activation to get them back to within optimal distance. So the last thing we've got to move is our Aufklärungskampf group. And we are going to have them move out by going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.5. Again, they will need to do a stopping engagement against the Armored Cavalry Battalion here from 7th Armored Division. In this case, it is a 4 plus 5 is a 9 for the Germans, minus 1 plus 4 is 5 for the Americans. It is a plus 5 for the Germans with the target real AV. They continue their hot streak with a 10, becomes a 15. That's a target step loss and retreat. They will retreat 1, 2, 3 hexes here. And that's the first fire event for the Germans. And they will 7.5, that's gonna be 8. They're gonna go 9, and they're gonna come here for 9.5, where they will need to stop again and do yet another stopping engagement at plus 5. Sorry about that, wandered a little off camera shot here. They just continued up the road there. So again, we need to do a stopping engagement against the cavalry battalion at plus 5. And they cooled off a bit, but it won't matter with the plus 5. That 5 becomes a 10, which is also target loss and retreat. So a second step loss to the 87th Cavalry Battalion, and they are going to retreat 1, 2, 3 hexes here to the secondary road. That will, unfortunately for the Germans, bring the Aufklärungs Battalion or Kampfgruppe to a halt, since it was their second fire event. They were hoping to be able to reach the 106th train's hex and jump the trains, which would then force the trains to displace. Let's see, I believe that's all of the 116th units. We got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. So yep, they are within command radius. And the only thing I'm going to do now is bring the combat trains up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they are going to displace all the way forward just to the east side of the Ur here at Berg-Reuland. So we've got the MSR running back here, and then from here off to the supply source. Now, that was it for the activation. We're going to roll for fatigue. They do have fresh status. We'd love to maintain that, but because they made an attack, it's going to be a 3 or less. And they do lose their fresh status, but it was, at least they got the most out of that. Now, a 4, 5, or 6 to try to get a second activation. We don't have to worry about any isolation effects on the formation now. So 4, 5, or 6 and 116th Panzer will get a second activation. And they do indeed get the second activation. I'm going to break it here so I can record the step losses to the American battalions that were engaged, and then we'll pick it back up with the second activation. The snafu roll for the second activation of 116th Panzer has them fatigue 0. They are not coordinated, they're not mixed. They get a +1 for the game specific, and they get another +1 for optimal distance, brings them up to +2. However, the trains are ghosted here, so that's going to bring them back down to a +1 for the second activation. And that's no problem as they roll a 10. Becomes an 11. That is a full activation. That gives us full movement. Let's see, 3 organic plus 2 attached. That's 5 artillery points and 2 objective markers. I think we're going to place the objective markers here on top of Task Force Brown. And let's see how we're going to try to exploit what they've accomplished so far. All right, let's start out. There is one issue we need to take care of as far as MSR security. There is a possibility of the Americans activating the 112th Regiment here. There is a battalion with the headquarters here. Our MSR right now runs along this secondary road that you can see. And what I don't want is to have the 112th get any funny ideas and come eastward to try to cut this road. So we're going to have to protect against that. And we're going to use one of our Panzer Grenadier battalions. He's actually going to come backwards. 1, 2, and then 3, 4. This should prevent any of the 112th regiments from being able to reach the MSR road here and prevent any difficulties in the future. Unfortunately, that takes one of our battalions out of the area where it can do the most damage. So hopefully that situation won't be very long-lived. The 116th does need some support, and that means more formations to activate, but the Americans are going to get a chance to do something before we can get some more help out here to the Greyhounds. So I think we're going to leave the Panzer Grenadiers in Saint-Vite. What we're going to do is we're going to start off with Kampfgruppe Stefan here. They're going to flip over to their deployed side, and they're going to enter this hex for 1/2, which puts them in the AV ZOC of Task Force Chappie from 7th Armored, requiring a stopping engagement. It's going to be AV5 plus an action rating of 5 against an AV of 3 and an action rating of 4. So 10 minus 7, that's a +3, and the target is real AV. There's no double objective zone, no multiple supports or prepared defense. And wow, Panzers are hot. Okay, 11 becomes a 14. That is a target loss and retreat. So Chappie needs to retreat 3 hexes, and it will take its first step loss. And he's going to go right back up the road, 1, 2, 3, towards the 7th Armored Division HQ here, trying to keep himself in between Stefan and the headquarters. That's the first fire event for Stefan. They are going to move into the 106th Division's trained hex and jump the combat trains. Now, when a combat train is jumped, it needs to displace 10 hexes up the MSR. And the MSR was running from Saint-Vite across this road here and then out to the west back to a supply source. So this is going to have to flip over to its ghost mode, and it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 up the MSR here. And Stefan will continue moving. Now the question is, do they turn west, push down the road to try to jump 7th Armored HQ, or do they turn east? Going west, they're not going to be able to get to 7th Armored because they're going to have to do at least 2 stopping engagements, one against each of the units still on the road. They only have 1 left. So with that in mind, they are going to go ahead and turn east and go 2, 3, 4. Now, this is the location of the 106th and Combat Command B of the 9th Armored Division's headquarters. And I want to take a closer look at this for just a second, because what they've done with this is the headquarters need to trace along a road, either a primary road, secondary road, or a track, to their combat trains, and the combat trains then trace to the supply source. Now, they cannot trace down the primary road here to 17 because the Panzer Grenadiers control it and it is blocked. They cannot trace through Kampfgruppe Stefan. The hex here is only connected by a rail line, plus it is in the zone of control of Kampfgruppe Stefan, so that is cut off. There's no road here, there's no road here. This track is in the zone of control of Kampfgruppe Stefan. So essentially what Stefan has done by moving into this location is to make it currently so that the trains for both of those formations are not in a legal hex. And unless something happens, unless Stefan can be moved out of here prior to the next snafu roll for both of those formations, they're going to have some difficulties because their trains will end up coming off and they'll be saddled with some heavy negative snafu die roll modifiers. So we will see probably what happens once an enemy formation starts to get into the rear areas of one of your formations, and what kind of difficulties that can create for you. So continuing on, 2, 3, 4. Let's see. Let's see, what do we want to do here? Let's, I tell you what, we're going to do the same thing here with the Pioneers. They are going to come, no, I take that back. Let's go ahead and start with the 1st Battalion of the 16th Panzer Regiment. They're going to flip to their deployed side. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that should work. And they will move 1 down the road, and they will jump the 112th Regiment train. So same thing here. It's going to flip to Ghost, and it's going to have to displace up the MSR. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hexes. And they have entered an AV ZOC of Task Force Wempel. This is going to be a 5 plus action rating 4 is a 9, minus AV3 plus action rating 4 is 7. It's a +2 to the Germans. And the target is real AV. Not a great roll. It is a 6 + 2, 8. That's a both loss. So first step loss for the 116th, and Wempel will take a step loss as well. And I think now, given that, they want to try again. Or do they want to stop? They're going to be stopped if they take their next fire event there anyway. So that complicates things just a little bit, or at least complicates the Germans' plans just a little bit. 1, 2. So let's I think we're gonna leave them right there for now. With the other 2nd Battalion back in Samvit, they are going to come west. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, since they're there, we'll have 1, 2 and a half. No. 1, 2, 3. All right. 1, 2 and a half, 3 and a half, 4 and a half, 5 and a half, 6 and a half, 7 and a half. yeah, then we will bring the other Panzer battalion to the west here. That's going to be 1, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5 to the crossroads here. They will have to fight a stopping engagement against Task Force Ray. So it's going to be AV3 plus 4 is 7, plus 1 for double objective zone is an 8, minus AV3 plus action rating 4, 7. So it's a plus 1 on the engagement table here. And they're looking to roll well. That's not going to do it. That's the first big setback there. That is fire loss and traffic. So a step loss to the battalion here, and that's going to kind of gum things up a bit. And as a result, we're going to have to change our plans here. I'm going to send them 1, 2, 3. So the pioneers, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't think they're going to be able to. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, the pioneers are going to shift into Sanvit here. That's going to free up the Panzer Grenadiers to come up this road. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we'll bring them all the way up, actually, onto the road itself. I believe everybody's still in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 6, 8, 10, 12. So right along here. All right. I think, let's see. I guess we could spend 1 artillery point and have the 2nd Battalion here spot for an artillery point on Ray. They are in terrain, so it's a 4, 5, or 6 to inflict a hit. 6. That is 1 hit on Task Force Ray, which is some consolation, I suppose, for the failed combat. Is there anything else we're going to do here? We don't, let's see, we do want to leave them there. I think what we might do is, actually, let's bring the headquarters forward a bit. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they're good. And I think now it's just a matter of rolling for fatigue. It's a 2nd activation, so a 1 or 2. We also did some engagements, which are also a 1 or 2. Remove the traffic. I think that's it. Oh, I did want to flip the trains here from their ghost side back to their normal side. And we'll roll for fatigue, 2 or less. And it is a 2, which is going to increase their fatigue from fatigue 0 to fatigue 1. The Greyhounds, that's going to wrap it up for their activations this turn. They are done. They started off pretty well. The 2nd activation did not go nearly as well as they had hoped. The 7th Armored Division was able to hold off the Panzers out here to the west, and you can see the division. I don't know if the camera can really show this all that well, but what we have is a kind of a gray wedge being driven into the American lines here, west of Sanvit. and you can almost see it as the left pincer arm of a giant double envelopment that may be going to entrap the 106th and Combat Command B as well as 14th Cavalry Group. So it remains to be seen if the German northern arm of the pincer can have as much success as the 116th Panzer has. And I think, having now seen a reasonable demonstration of what a near full-strength Panzer division is capable of, I'll go ahead and wrap up this episode here, and we'll pick up the next episode with the Americans' next activation. Thanks for watching today. Hope you're enjoying things. Again, any questions or comments, leave them below and I'll get back to you. Appreciate you watching, and we'll see you.